All right, let's talk about November 1942. For 4 straight days, the entire Pacific War basically hung in the balance. It all came down to this one brutal, chaotic battle at sea. We're talking about the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal. And yeah, this is the one that changed absolutely everything.
So you've got this huge, sprawling naval battle. But the crazy part, the whole thing, I mean everything, revolved around a single strip of dirt on some island you'd probably never heard of. So that's the big question, right? How in the world did one little airstrip become the key to the entire Pacific War?
Well, it's because that airstrip had a name, and it was basically the main character of this whole drama, Henderson Field.
You see, Henderson Field wasn't just some runway. No, think of it like a strategic choke point. It was the one place that controlled the vital sea lanes connecting the United States to Australia. So if you held that airfield, you held the lifeline. It's that simple.
And what that means is the goals for each side were crystal clear. I mean, there was no gray area here. For the Allies, it was simple: hold Henderson Field, whatever it takes. For the Japanese, the mission was the mere opposite: destroy that airfield, take back the island. That's it. You can just feel the collision coming, can't you?
And you gotta understand, Japan wasn't just messing around here. They weren't planning some small hit and run. Nope. They were gearing up for one massive, all-in knockout punch to end this whole thing for good.
So here was the plan, and it was pretty straightforward and pretty brutal. They'd send a massive naval force led by their biggest battleships to sail in under the cover of night. Job number 1, just pulverize Henderson Field. Turn the whole place into a cratered moonscape. Once the planes were gone, then the real prize could arrive, a huge convoy. We're talking 11 ships packed with troops to land and just overwhelm the Marines on the ground.
So, the Japanese fleet moves in on the night of November 12th. And what happened next? Well, it wasn't some textbook naval battle with neat lines and formations. Oh no. It was pure, unfiltered chaos in the dark.
Survivors had a perfect way to describe it. They said it was a bar fight in a dark room. Just picture that. Ships are literally bumping into each other, firing at point-blank range. Nobody knows who's who. Radar is brand new, kind of unreliable. It was just a total melee, where you were lucky to survive the next 30 seconds.
And the price for the U.S. Navy? It was just staggering. 2 U.S. admirals, Daniel Callahan and Norman Scott, were killed on the bridges of their own ships. Think about that. It's the only time in all of World War II that 2 American admirals were lost in the same battle at sea. Just incredible.
But they did it. They accomplished the mission. The American ships, as beaten up and bloody as they were, had thrown themselves in front of those Japanese battleships. The bombardment was stopped. Henderson Field was safe. For now.
Because as the sun started to rise, the tables were about to turn in a huge way. The thing the Japanese were trying to destroy? Yeah, it was about to become their worst nightmare. The airfield was fighting back.
And this is where we meet the legendary Cactus Air Force. That was the nickname for this scrappy, thrown-together group of Marine, Navy, and Army pilots flying out of Henderson. Cactus was just the code name for Guadalcanal. And let me tell you, these guys were operating in the absolute worst conditions imaginable. Constant attacks, short on supplies, short on everything. Everything except guts. And this set up this really deadly 24-hour cycle. At night, the seas belonged to the Japanese Navy. They'd come in and hunt the American ships. The U.S. Navy's job was basically just to survive till morning, because when that sun came up, Henderson Field woke up. The Cactus Air Force took to the sky, and the Japanese fleet had to run.
And man, did they deliver a counterpunch. So on November 13th, the day after that insane night battle, planes from Henderson found the Japanese battleship Hiei and sank her. First Japanese battleship sunk by the Allies in the whole war. Then, the next day, they found the real target, that convoy of troop ships, and all day long it was just relentless attack after relentless attack, sinking most of them right there in the water.
But Japan wasn't giving up just yet. They had one more card to play. They sent another powerful fleet led by the battleship Kirishima for one last shot at bombarding that airfield. But this time, the U.S. Navy had a surprise waiting for them. They had their own battleships on the scene.
What happened next was something you almost only see in movies, a rare head-to-head battleship duel in the dead of night. The American battleship, the USS Washington, used its advanced radar to lock onto the Kirishima, and then they just opened up. In just a few minutes, the mighty Japanese battleship was a burning wreck, and the fight was over.
And just like that, it was over. 4 days of non-stop combat. The sea was just littered with the wreckage of both fleets. But to figure out who really won this thing, you can't just count up the sunken ships. You have to look at the bigger picture.
Now, if you just look at the raw numbers, the losses, it looks pretty rough on both sides, right? The US lost a couple of cruisers, 4 destroyers. Japan lost 2 battleships, a cruiser, 3 destroyers. It was a brutal, costly fight for sure. It almost looks like a draw, until you remember what the whole point of the battle was. And this is the slide that tells the whole story. Remember that convoy? The whole reason for the Japanese attack? They sent 11 transport ships loaded with thousands of desperately needed troops. And how many of them actually got ashore to fight? 0. Effectively, none. The Cactus Air Force made sure of that. The entire reinforcement plan was a complete and total failure.
And that right there is why this was an absolute, unquestionable strategic victory for the United States. Yeah, they lost ships, but they achieved their objective. The Japanese lost ships and failed completely at their main goal. Henderson Field was saved. Japan's last, best shot at taking Guadalcanal was over.
This defeat, this was the moment the tide truly turned. It completely broke Japan's offensive momentum in the Pacific. After Guadalcanal, they were never again able to launch a major strategic attack. From this point on, for the rest of the war, they were on the defensive. The long, bloody road to Tokyo started right here. So it all comes back to that one question, doesn't it? What if? What if the Cactus Air Force had failed? If those pilots flying those patched-up planes from that one little airstrip hadn't been able to stop that convoy, just think about how different the rest of the war in the Pacific might have been. Something to chew on. We'll catch you on the next one.